probably the most popular piece of music to come out of the American Civil War. Very, very popular tune. This song started in 1800. It was a Methodist hymn called "Brothers, Will You Meet Us on Canaan's Happy Shores." It was what they called a camp meeting song or a revival song. The minister would sing a line to the congregation, they would sing it back to him. And of course it was very easy to learn. It had one line in each verse. You just repeated it 4 times, then it had a real catchy "Glory, Glory, Hallelujah" chorus. "Brothers, Will You Meet Us" as the United States went through what they called the Second Awakening in the middle of the 19th century. This song was used by just about every denomination. So by the 1850s, everybody knew, "Brothers, Will You Meet Us on Canaan's Happy Shores." The Civil War began. The 13th Volunteer Massachusetts Infantry Regiment had a young private in it by the name of John Brown. John had the distinction of being the worst soldier in the entire regiment. He couldn't remember left from right, he couldn't march in step, he couldn't remember the order of arms. So the men took "Brothers, Will You Meet Us" and invented what they called the John Brown song. And they made up verses about everything John did wrong. They found out it was great to march and drill to. John had a good sense of humor, he had a good voice. He sang right along with them as he marched out of step. The regiment wound up in Washington in the summer of 1861. And everywhere they marched, they sang John Brown this and John Brown that. Everybody thought that they were singing about John Brown, who on this very date, October 16th, 1859, raided the Federal Armory at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. He was captured by Robert E. Lee and Jeb Stuart in the United States Marine Corps, executed on December 2nd for treason against the state of Virginia, and he had become a martyr for the issue of slavery. So when people heard these guys singing John Brown this and John Brown that, they thought they were singing about that John Brown. They added verses of their own. The song was actually called "Glory, Hallelujah." The arrangement was written by Patrick Gilmore, Annie's older brother. It was published in sheet music form in the fall of 1861. It was better known to the Union Army as John Brown's Body. It was by far the most popular marching song of the entire Civil War for the Union Army. Enter Julia Ward Howe. Born in 1819 in New York City into a very, very wealthy Victorian family, she received a very exclusive education. By the time she was 18, she was a published author. She could speak 6 languages, and she spent her time bopping around in the social circles in New York and in New England as well. She met a doctor 19 years her senior by the name of Samuel Gridley Howe. Howe was very well known, working for both blind and deaf. He had been a mercenary with the Greek army during their Civil War. He was very well known in social circles, and when he was in public in a setting like this, he was one of the most personable people you could talk to. Wonderful person to get engaged in conversation, very, very polite, just a wonderful person to get to know. Julia fell for him. They got married in 1843. Their union would produce 6 children, 5 that would live to be adults, 2 of which would receive Pulitzer Prizes later in their life. But at home, Dr. Howe was an absolute tyrant. Julia Ward Howe was a very active woman. She wanted to become an ordained minister. At that time, women were not allowed to be ministers where she was living. She was involved in the new women's movement. She was an abolitionist, and she was simply a very, very active person. And this caused some tension in the marriage. They stayed together. I'll never know why she stayed with this guy, but like I said, they had 5 children that lived to be adults. In 1861, the war began. Dr. Howe started the United States Sanitation Commission, and their job was to inspect camps and make sure soldiers were practicing good hygiene. Julia would join him on November 16, 1861, in a camp outside of Washington, D.C. And as they were doing their camp inspection, a company of men from the 6th Wisconsin, under the command of Rufus Dawes from Marietta, Ohio. The good stuff came from Ohio. But anyway, this company of men from the 6th Wisconsin marched by singing "John Brown's Body Lies Moldering in the Grave." And a friend of Julia's leaned over and said, "That song is really disgusting. You could do a much better job with that." The next morning, just as dawn was breaking, she woke up with the melody of John Brown's Body in her head. She sat down and wrote a 5-verse poem she called the Battle Hymn of the Republic. She sold it to Atlantic Monthly newspaper in February of 1862 for $5. Patrick Gilmore wrote the arrangement. It was published in sheet music form later on that summer, and it very quickly became one of the most popular songs of the Union States. After the war, became one of the most popular songs written during the Civil War. Theodore Roosevelt tried to make this our national anthem in 1902. There were still enough grumpy Confederates in Congress, they wouldn't even allow that to happen. Otherwise, we'd be singing this before the NASCAR race on Sunday afternoons. Very, very popular song. There are still people down south that do not care for this song. Next week, I'll be in the Battle of Leatherwood reenactment down in southern Kentucky. And they have a Confederate reenactor that's also the preacher for the church service on Sunday morning. For the last 8 years, he has told me, "You will not play that song in my church." And my response is, "Get over it." So, Battle Hymn of the Republic. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. Hath moves the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. He sounded forth a trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before the judgment seat. Be swift, my soul, answer him, be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. He died to make men holy, let us fight to make men free, while God is marching on.